guy says, well, if we're going to go, it's got to be the late show. So I think it's like the 10:15 show. So we're going out to the theater, and we get there, and pay the ticket and go in. We're figuring late night show. There's not going to be very many people there. Well, here we are, 3 guys, and those guys being older, but we go in, and it's filled with teenage kids. And here we are, teachers, So we sneak in, get in the back row, and we're doing this. So, oh God, there's a Madison kid here in there, and we watch this movie, and we did have a good time, but we snuck in and watched that show because it brought back old memories from college. So Kathy asked me to share that with you, and I wanted to do that. In closing, I want to thank you for listening to my thoughts about my pal and my colleague. I am sure that the maestro is already charting a halftime show, putting us in squads, copying the music and assigning parts. And when we see him, he's ready to rehearse us, and we're ready to make a band. So, God bless Mr. A, and thank you for listening to me, and he'll be sadly missed, but he's in a nice place now, too. Thank you, and here is his son-in-law, Dr. Tom Pearson, that would like to talk to you.
Thank you, Ben. As you know, I'm Joe's son-in-law and Kathy's husband. And not only was I lucky enough to be Joe's son-in-law, but we both shared the same profession. We were both fellow band directors. And we had many things in common. Love for good music and good jazz especially. But working in education, and always sharing a good off-color joke every once in a while, and we both shared the love of Kathy. Joe had a couple of mottos, and one was be quiet and listen. And those of you that know Joe pretty well, you know that he had a kind of a mischievous streak, to say the least. And so the first time that Kathy introduced Joe and I, we were in Florida, and we were sitting on the patio out in Florida, and it was just Joe and I, and we were talking about band and music and teaching kids and all of those things that you talk about. And Joe watched a lizard crawl across my back. Did not say a word. He's being quiet and observing. But this was the mischievous part, because then he watched it crawl down my arm. He wanted to see what I was going to do. And what surprised him was I flicked it off and kept talking. And that ticked him off. Because there was no reaction. But at Christmas time, when Joe would come down to our house in Florida, he and I would sneak out sometimes. And of course, what I've come to learn was that Joe had the same red Fiat Spider that I had owned. And so we would sneak out and sometimes go for that ride again, and in a different car. But the most important thing, when Kathy would miss us on Christmas, we would be out in the truck, and he loved to listen to those off-color CDs, the jokes that I had. And so we would sneak away, and nobody in the family knew that. As I said, Joe filled the role of father-in-law and band director, but after my father passed away, he became a father. But the most intimidating thing for me was when I was conducting a community band and Joe was sitting playing in the band. Now, how intimidating is that to have Mr. A sitting in your band that you're conducting? That was intimidating. But isn't Joe happy today? Because look at all the people he's brought together here today. And that's what he did best. He brought people together. Diane shared with me just the other day, I hope it's okay if I share this. We were talking about how Joe brought people together. And Diane shared with me that one day Joe came into the bank and said, I wish my son could find somebody like you. And what do you know? They're married. But isn't it amazing how one man can teach this, he can reach this many lives? Joe was quiet, soft-spoken, gentle soul that had a strong fist and a velvet glove. When he talked quietly, you knew he was serious. He loved coming over to our house on the lake, and we would have family meals on the lake. He especially loved coming over in the morning for breakfast B. This was after he'd already been out to breakfast A with all of his buddies. And for the summer, he would come over to our house, and most of the summer, Kathy would be here, and he would have breakfast B. And sometimes it was breakfast C. But he always looked out on the lake and always said, it's another beautiful day. He always enjoyed the sunsets on the lake. And many times when Joe would come over, we would strike up a game of pool. And it was never about the game of pool. It was about the conversation. And it never failed. It would always get to the point where one of us was going to win, and we'd start over. Because it was about spending the time. It was about the discussion. We talked about music, we talked about education, we talked about kids, we talked about music, and we talked about life. As you heard, Joe had the love for cars, but his last ride with Kathy was in the VW with the top down. As Ben said, Joe was not only a musician and teacher, but he was a teacher of life's lessons. It was not about the medals, it was not about the trophies, it was not about all the accolades and the awards. It was about the difference you can make in people's lives. And for his students, music was the vehicle to teach those life lessons. It was about discipline, hard work, goal setting, teamwork, enjoying life, and most of all, making a difference in the world. Joe was my biggest fan, and I was his. As you know, one of his other mottos was, leave it better than you found it. And he did. At Kathy's request, I'm going to read and paraphrase a section of Dan Fogelberg's Leader of the Band. A quiet man of music denied a similar fate. He earned his love through discipline, a thundering velvet hand, his gentle means of sculpting souls, which takes us all years to understand. The leader of the band is tired and his eyes are growing old, but his blood runs through all of our instruments, and his song is in our souls. Our lives will be important to imitate this man. We are all a living legacy of the leader of the band. I'd like to close with famous elementary school philosopher, Dr. Seuss. Let's not cry because it's over. Let's smile because it happened.
These are two acts that I don't want to follow. Consequently, Kathy and Beth is going to sing to us a very fine duet at this time.